Our next speaker is Theo Nuss. Excuse me, Theo Nuss. And he is a senior in fisheries and wildlife and conservation sciences. And he is from all the way from Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Morning, everybody. Like Cynthia said, my name's Theodore Nuss. And I was a citizens arts and science intern with the Forecast Project at the Cascade Head Biosphere Reserve. Now, the Forecast Project is really interesting. We are a sentinel site for the Forecast Project, understanding the wide array of effects of climate change along the Oregon coast, but specifically at our reserve, because our reserve, as Marina discussed earlier, is a pretty big place. It covers, the uplands north of Lincoln City, all the way up down the Salmon River, and then Lincoln City itself is actually a part of the agreed area. And so it's not just a place of nature off in the woods where no people are. People are a part of this reserve, and climate change will affect all of it. It's not just science is done elsewhere and people don't get to hear about it until after the fact. It's a community effort. And so what I wanted to do for this was kind of like a meta presentation. Our video editor and in chief, Richard Wright, made a really good video series called Raindrop to Sea, where it follows the path of a raindrop from the uplands downhill to the river and then out to the ocean. And I kind of wanted to mimic that with a story map. And that way you kind of get an idea of where we are, like the place that is, Cascade Head. And so you get an idea of what we have to communicate, because a lot of what I did was communication effort, but I wanted to give you why. Communicating without a real cause seems to be pointless in my mind. And I felt like we had a lot of things to communicate about. We had a lot of science and a lot of community effort that we wanted to get across to our community, our friends. And so a story map, if you're not familiar, is really cool. It'll go through, as I scroll down, it'll jump from map point to map point, and I'll expand upon those as we go. That way it's kind of interactive. And so here on the uplands, this is just north of Lincoln City, right there where the one is Marina already mentioned it prior, and I don't want to belabor the point. The uplands uses the PhenoCam project, where they place cameras at selected points to monitor the effects of climate change on the life cycles of plants throughout our upland habitat. And then we scroll down and it should zoom, there we go, to the Salmon River at Knight Park, where Rebecca Flitcroft and her assistant Megan and myself went out this past weekend, and we put out traps and captured green crabs. And the effort was to monitor the presence of green crabs in the Salmon River, specifically as it relates to climate change, because prior to climate change, Oregon was too cold for green crabs. And now that climate change is changing, the habitat has become more suitable to the invasion of green crabs. And so monitoring their population growth and their presence within the Salmon River, which had previously been thought to not be a suitable habitat for green crabs, but we had over 40 green crabs in only a 24-hour trapping period. So I'd say we have a decent amount. And then we go down and the map should move, there we go. And so the next one is the Rocky Intertidal Zone. We have researchers coming out from different organizations to monitor ochre sea stars and to assess their status in basically the aftermath of sea star wasting disease, which devastated multiple sea star populations from Southern California all the way up to Alaska about 8 years ago. And ochre sea stars, unlike the sunflower sea star, were actually able to make somewhat of a tenuous hold and keep their populations from just utterly collapsing. But because we have such wonderful rocky habitats right there north of Rhodes End Beach, we host researchers coming out to assess their populations as well. And then the final habitat is our oceanic and subtidal habitat. And the way we monitor this scientifically is actually one of my favorite things in science today is citizen science. Like Marina said, we use a lot of volunteers for like the uplands. Well, we use a lot of volunteers for the oceanic and subtidal. We use iNaturalist, which is an app where you can take photos of organisms and put it on the internet, and it helps you identify it. And other people will come in as well and help you ID what you found. How we did this was we created the rack line project within iNaturalist. So when you walk along the high tide line along the beach of Lincoln City, whatever you find, kelp, shellfish, whales, seals, whatever you find, you can put it on iNaturalist and put it on the rack line project. And now every person who participates is collecting data for us. And so citizen science really jumps over that logistical barrier of having people out there and collecting the data. Otherwise, it would just be a bunch of volunteers and undergrads and just not enough hours in the day and not enough people on the beach. And so with these 4 habitats, we really wanted to, a part of what's important, like this is like, that's the meat of it. We do the research and we collect the data, and it helps support greater conservation efforts in the area. And how we kind of bring that home is we engage with the people of Lincoln City. We go down to the Oregon Coast Aquarium. We engage with people who come to see stuff about the Marine Reserve program. And so the next step that we go to is right here in front of Chinook Winds. Marina already covered it, so I'm not going to delve too deep. We did a public exhibition with art on the beach. Last year, this year we had sea otter and bull kelp, and then the next day we had sea stars. And it's a great way for people to come out to the beach, see the work that we're doing, see it on Facebook, and get engaged, get excited to help learn more about the science that is occurring in their own backyard. It isn't just some far off place. It's not Fiji. It's Lincoln City, Oregon. It's happening here. And one of the things that I really loved, and Marina mentioned as well, is art illuminating science. When we did our art workshop at the cultural center in Lincoln City, people were able to participate. They were actually able to learn how to print fish. I got to learn how to print fish. And I also got a really wonderful opportunity to take this photograph. I love it because you can see the level of concentration. That is engagement. That person is excited. They are focused. They're trying to learn a new skill, but at the same time, they're learning about science. They're learning about the work that people do. They're learning about the bounty of the Pacific and the Oregon coast. It's not just an abstract thought when you put it into an art that someone can actually participate actively in. And so to me, that was one of the biggest steps, or one of the biggest boons to our effort, is that people get locked in, they get excited. And then we also try to add to this by having actual educational content, not just art. We had public speakers from Josie Island, and then we had Miss Chanel from the Alaka Alliance, and they both had presentations on, they had a presentation on kelp, and then they had a presentation on the reintroduction of sea otters to the Oregon coast. And so the reason, like, this is, a lot of this is why we make an effort to communicate with people, because we're doing the work, we're getting people involved. We want people involved. We want people excited. We want people ready to help make changes that can protect the biosphere, which has come such a long way from Pixie Land. If anyone knows about it, you can look it up. There was a theme park on the wetland, and it's such a, to me, it's a success story. The recovery of the area is such a, to me, it seemed like an insurmountable task, and they still did it. And so I said my title said communicating science and beauty, and I only talked about science really. I'm going to give you a little treat for being patient with me. And so one of the reasons why I got, one of the things that we talked about when I first became an intern was I love photography. I aspire to be like Paul Nicklin, taking photographs of wild animals and telling a story about it, being able to help people get excited about the behavior of animals that they would never be able to see themselves. I mean, Paul Nicklin photographs leopard seals. I'll probably never be in the presence of a leopard seal in the wild in my life. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll get lucky. But for me, part of that was when I came to Cascade Head was whether or not I can communicate the really just beautiful moments that exist every day at Cascade Head. My first night, I watched bald eagles fight for fish. I went out to the river with Marina, my, co-intern, and we saw these river otters. Just one was grooming and one was chowing down on a sculpin. So it was just like this beautiful moment in a Thursday afternoon that I got to photograph these animals. And it's just such a wonderful opportunity to be in the place that isn't very far away. I mean, a lot of people in Lincoln City can and should go out and see this wonderful nature that's right there at their fingertips. It is not, the wild, the Yukon wilderness or something like that. It's Lincoln City. And to tie this in to basically what I consider a really big step for me as a photographer was I was able to show my photos to the director of the Historical Society of Lincoln City, and she'll be using some of my photos of these otters and a little paragraph of my own words on what I call backyard biology, which is the idea that you can find natural beauty as long as you have two eyes and some patience. And so what I wanted to really stress here was that it's all interconnected. It's all present. It's all right here around you. It's not, they're not separate. They're not abstract. They're not in different locations. They're in your yard. They're in your community. Science is happening and we can all participate. And so I really want people to be excited about that. I want people to see the photos of those otters and go to the Salmon River and look for them because they're there. And if you have the time, you'll find them. And so at the end, I'd like to thank Duncan Berry, my mentor. I'd like to thank Dan Twitchell because he was very supportive of me talking at the Marine Reserve Day. Olivia Aubrey was really helpful in getting me rolling in a lot of projects. She coordinated a lot of my meetings, getting links done for me. Paul Robertson and Richard Wright were essential in just kind of getting my work done on a day-to-day basis. And Cynthia Leonard was very helpful getting us through some logistical issues with our housing. So it was a great experience and thank you for listening. Oh, questions? Gabe?
I know that you have an Instagram page and it's really fun to see you like how you can communicate your pictures through like multiple mediums. Is there any is Cascade Head looking to do more outreach through maybe your photography or local photographers? And how are they, I guess, trying to work with like new mediums like TikTok or other outreach methods in like this new, I guess, social media space?
Yeah, so a big part of what I did this summer, I know I focused really heavily on this meta presentation, but a large part of my work this summer was working on a communications plan. And a large portion of that, because it was really heavily based on my experience, was supporting more endeavors into social media using like, if something is shareable, like an event, we would use Facebook. If something is art-based, like a photograph or fish printing, it would go on Instagram. And so we're creating this kind of pipeline to know if we have a specific kind of media where it best fits. Partnering with photographers would be a wonderful next step. I would definitely like to, contribute my photography to the Cascade Head, Instagram, things like that. And to answer your question with that was like, Cascade Head and Forecast already partners with a lot of artists. It's just that, up until recently, we didn't have a strong presence with Instagram. So it'll get going, but it's a future endeavor. Thank you.